appropriate.
Perfect. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who are online. Welcome to the latest AABS seminar on innovation on virtual teaching and learning for graduate programs during the post-COVID-19 crisis. I'm really excited about this topic because we've got a lineup of experts and renowned academics who will share with us this afternoon. My name is Grafton White. I am a board member of the AABS, Association of African Business Schools, and I'm also director at the Namibian Business School. So good day and thank you. We have on our panel today Professor John Foster Pedley, who is the Dean and Director of Henley Business School, South Africa. And it's really a great pleasure to have John with us today. Secondly, we have Professor Robert Ibe-Hinson, who's the Acting Director of Institutional Advancement at the University of Ghana and Head of Department of Marketing and Entrepreneurship, also at the University of Ghana Business School. So again, very experienced contributor, and we thank him for being with us today. And finally, but not least, Professor Sama Atala. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. And he's Associate Dean for Graduate Studies and Research and Associate Professor of Economics at the American University in Cairo Business School. So this is fantastic. Again, thank you, Sama, for being here. And well, we're looking forward to this. May I ask that we go straight into our presentations with our, I'm going to ask Professor Robert Ibe-Hinson.
I'm here, Grafton.
Hi, John. Hi,
I'm
John.
here,
Good
yeah.
to see
Can you see me or
Good.
not?
Yeah, we can see you. Great to see you. Great to see you. We're going to just slightly change the order of things, John, so give you a chance to settle a moment. I was just introducing as our first contributor, Prof. Ibe-Hinson, just to give us a West African perspective on this problem. So, Prof. Hinson, over to you.
Okay, all right. So, good afternoon to everyone, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Professor Foster Pedley, you're welcome. So, I'm going to give you a Ghanaian perspective, but because I work across quite a number of universities in Africa, I'll oscillate between Ghana and then give you perspectives I know from other countries as well, just so that we can get a very holistic perspective on how this COVID-19 pandemic is both a blessing and a curse. And for Ghana, on March 15th, the president directed that all educational institutions should be shut. And so the Minister of Education convened a special interagency meeting to sort of give a perspective of what universities should do. So around that time, the University of Ghana decided that since schools were closed, we had to migrate to a certain online product delivery in order to finish the semester, which had been truncated sometime in the middle. Now, but before then, we had already acquired the Sakai learning management system as far back as 2014. Basic infrastructural level, we had something to go on to, and we're using that system in large part for what we call the University of Ghana required courses for undergraduate program delivery. So before COVID, the learning management system was not so much for postgraduate teaching and learning. So when COVID came, we had to overcome a number of challenges, and I categorized them into three. We had to overcome cultural challenges, we had to overcome strategic challenges, and then we had to overcome more logistical and operational type challenges. So what do I mean by cultural challenges? Well, for the most part, a lot of our educational instruction and delivery had been face-to-face and brick and mortar. And so students will come. Okay, I understand is the sound okay? Professor Foster, can you hear me? Is that okay?
You're phasing in and out, Robert. So I don't know if you're moving, but
okay.
If you could keep still, yeah, okay.
Okay, so I will try and keep still and do the needful. So I was talking about cultural, strategic, and then what I call logistical or operational. So a lot of our postgraduate delivery is face-to-face, a lot of it. In fact, maybe almost all of it is face-to-face. And therefore, getting students to agree that the semester would have to finish using online delivery was a bit of an uphill task. And I can tell you that in Ghana, even in South Africa, for some business school I work with, students were not very comfortable. They actually were advocating sometimes a certain refund in their tuition fees because they said they didn't sign up for online, they signed up for brick and mortar. So we had to negotiate that phase very, very carefully in order to bring them around to understand that we don't have options as service providers and service recipients. So eventually they came around. Now the paradox of that occurrence is so fascinating because as I speak to you, I can read you testimonials from students that go like this. Online learning has brought a great relief and has also presented beautiful opportunities when the COVID situation came. Now the hassle of rushing in traffic and scratching people's cars just to make it to lectures has been deleted. And now the convenience of relaxing and having the classes in the palm of my hands. The joy of it is the opportunity to play back what you may have missed. If I got the chance to choose again, I would do it 1,000 times over. Now that is a microcosm of how something that turned out to be a challenge has now been so well accepted by postgraduate students now that they are saying that if they had to do it 1,000 times over, they don't have an issue having to consume educational services via online delivery mode. So it's something to note when I'm concluding a little later. So the cultural challenges had to do with, we had to understand there's a paradigm shift. A lot of communication had to go on so that we can move to this new way of doing things. The second challenge was what I call a strategic challenge. Now that relates not just to Ghana, but for several other business schools I know across the African continent. I don't think in the scheme of things, we have the requisite digital roadmaps to cater for a pandemic like this. But that said, there are opportunities now for delivering those kind of routines so that we can have more innovative approaches to teaching and learning. So I don't quite think the strategic frameworks existed for most business schools to go full digital and also deliver value to their various stakeholder audiences. The last one is logistical and operational. That had to do with the fact that students complained, for instance, that they needed airtime, they needed access to data. And therefore, if you're migrating them onto online delivery mode, who was going to fund that sort of thing? We were assuming they had tablets, we were assuming they had laptops. And some of the arguments they made was that you can't throw us into something where you can't be sure that we had all the requisite tools to be able to consume the services you were giving to us. Another logistical challenge also had to do with the fact that how would we be assessed? Because for the large part, a lot of business schools still have a final exam. You go and sit in a room, you write it out, it gets marked, and then you get grades. We had to innovate around it. And so those were some of the challenges we're facing at the beginning. Now, in terms of challenges that have been resolved, we have been able to load all programs onto the learning management system, which is Sakai at the University of Ghana. And all the courses have been created and assigned to their respective instructors based on data received from the various departments across the university and the business school. But the innovation I truly enjoy about this digital delivery is that apart from the learning management system, lecturers can use Google Classroom, they can use WebEx, they can use Zoom. So nobody is really constricted to operate on the learning management system if they don't want to. So in the scheme of things, lecturers are delivering with what students perceive as value, are able to access very easily, and that room to maneuver makes it very, very easy to deliver. So what sort of challenges have not been resolved so far? The first one is the issue of automatic enrollment if you had to use the learning management system. Currently, faculty and student enrollment on the Sakai learning management system has to be done manually. And if this process were automated, it will put less pressure on our e-learning team at the University of Ghana. The second challenge that hasn't been quite resolved is the issue of Turnitin subscription and Turnitin as a platform or a tool for dealing with plagiarism issues. Now, for the University of Ghana, our user community is currently more than the subscribed 20,000 licenses. So we are sort of sorting that out and trying to deal with the increased pressure on the Turnitin issue. Then we also have a few challenges with storage. We need more storage to accommodate the increasing demand by faculty through the use of tools like Dropbox, assignment tools, resources tools, but we are trying to work our way around that. So in order to give my colleagues the chance to also present, I'd like to deal very quickly with the opportunities I see for taking this digital delivery forward and creating value for our student audiences. And in fact, actually expanding the base of the consumption of business school products across the continent of Africa. The first thing I'd like to discuss is the fact that business schools on this continent have to ask some difficult questions about how do we undergo digital transformation going forward. My dream, my fantasy is that every business school on the continent of Africa would develop what I call digital roadmaps, which basically means that from Morocco to Egypt to South Africa to Ghana to Nigeria, all of us should begin to embrace new business models, begin to understand that issues attendant to online delivery, remote working, remote consumption of university services will become the new normal going forward. This is not a debatable issue, because even if you had cultural challenges, it would seem that increasingly the recipient of our business school services are beginning to enjoy the online delivery. So we need to take a hard look at, do we still stay brick and mortar? Do we go full digital? Should we use blended learning approaches? This is something that should agitate the mind of deans and senior management in business schools across Africa. So the first question to contend with is, how do we undergo digital transformation? The second thing I think we also need to concern ourselves with is, how do we deliver integrated communication packages going forward? How do we use new integrated communication models? And by this, what I'm saying is that apart from live teaching or live presentations that I am currently engaged in, for instance, how do we begin to have more packaged forms of service delivery, a certain mix of videos and online instructional routines for delivering service? And the reason why I think this is so crucial is that post-COVID, I don't think that you're going to have 200 students coming from the US or Canada to come and consume the services of Henley Business School in South Africa or the University of Ghana Business School in Ghana. But here's what I think would happen going forward. I think that if African business schools develop very nuanced courses that have an African flavor, an emerging economy flavor, we can begin to attract students from all over the world, from Asia, from North America, from the UK, from Europe, who can now consume these services using digital online delivery platforms. And I really believe this is the way to expand our international student base, expand revenue from international programs. And at that level, I think COVID is a game changer in forcing us to think of ways to innovate around delivering products and services, not just to our local constituents anymore, but to an increasingly global student audience. Closely aligned to that fact, which will be point 3 for me, is that how do we use COVID-19 as a new international marketing launchpad? How do we develop more internationally oriented online programs? And whilst I speak to it, I did an interview last week because the University of Cape Town called me about something the Vice Chancellor was doing. And I spoke about international market. And I said, look, we need as a start, as African business schools, to also begin to deepen South-South cooperation. Why are my students not consuming, for instance, stuff from Egypt or from South Africa? Because when it comes to the marketing space, for instance, in North America, the idiosyncrasies may be markedly different from West Africa, from East Africa, and then to South Africa. So I think at a basic level, if we have to begin to deepen our international marketing footprint, we should do more South-South stuff. We should be talking to West. West should be talking to North. North should be talking to South. And if we are delivering online programs, we can begin to sell one to another and develop the capacities and competencies to now engage the global North and deliver value to them. So number one, how do we develop new digital roadmaps? Number two, how do we develop new integrated communication models? Number three, how do we use COVID-19 as a new international marketing launchpad? Then number four, how do we serve and support our various critical stakeholder audiences? Because even as I propose new digital roadmaps, we also need to develop a very keen sense of who are currently in our stakeholder web. Students, alumni, university councils, university management, management of business schools, current students. And if we are able to do a certain careful delineation of our stakeholder web, the blessing of developing digital roadmaps is that we can use the COVID as a trigger point or as an inflection point to engage all these stakeholder audience at a more digital level and deliver better value to them. The last point I want to stress on is, how do we support our university and business school employees and transform them into what I call digital warriors at a strategic and functional level? Whether we like it or not, we have staff and we have administrative personnel and faculty who may not be too digitally savvy as we speak. Now, the issue of being digitally aware is now not a luxury we can afford to have or not have. So going forward, we need to create the appropriate training mechanisms and the appropriate institutional and cultural frameworks to transform all our employees into digital warriors, so that whether they are using traditional brick and mortar, using digital or blended approaches, they are supremely equipped to deliver value to all their stakeholder audiences, so that we can grow these business schools, make their revenue lines a lot deeper, and then we can reposition ourselves to become stronger when we are doing international collaboration, and then eventually deliver better value to all our various stakeholder audiences as well. So just to recap, number one, how do we develop new digital roadmaps? Number two, how do we develop new integrated communication models? Number three, how do we use COVID-19 as a new international marketing launchpad? Number four, how do we serve and support our stakeholder audiences in more profound ways? And then number five, how do we develop our university and business school employees and transform them into digital warriors so they can perform better, deliver better value, make our revenue lines stronger, and make us better when we go into international collaborations? So I'll stop here, and then I can dilate on the issues a lot more if I'm invited to. Thank you, Professor Grafton White. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Prof. Inson. Thank you for that very detailed and in-depth analysis and presenting us with these 5 questions. I'm going to go directly to Prof. John Foster Pedley, who I know has done a lot of work in this area and may be able to address some of those questions that you've thrown up into the ether for us to consider. So John, please, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Can you just check in? You can hear me okay? I'm putting on a slide. It's going on to, can you see that all right?
Yeah, we can, John.
Yeah,
great.
I'm just going to move my camera because it's cunningly slipped across to another one of my screens. So you'll be looking in my right ear if I don't move the camera. So hang on, see if I can get this right. Just give me a moment. Yeah, I think we're okay. Yeah. Right, you looking at me there? I can't see my own image at the moment, so is that all right?
We can see you clearly, John.
Excellent. So thank you very much, everyone. It's really nice to be able to talk to you. It's actually such a privilege to be able to talk to so many people from around our beautiful continent. And that was a lovely presentation. And thank you for AABS for allowing us to do this and present. I'm going to run through a few things. We actually have done a lot. And in fact, what we've been doing is we've been offering free seminars to anybody, other universities around Africa, just to share everything we've learned. And the reason for we doing that is, as we figured that the education mandate is so big on the continent, we better all, you know, trying to hold stuff onto yourself seems so stupid, that we might just share everything, and then we'll all do well in the end. And let's work on that. So this is a little bit about what we're sharing. So this, the first slide I'm going to show here is just why it's important. We all know these are the Gini coefficients, and we all know the distribution of wealth and prosperity is scattered across in a lot of the countries in Africa, really bad in South Africa. In fact, it's the worst in South Africa. This Gini coefficient shows that we've got to do a lot for education, but the COVID environment really amplified this to, I think, to everybody.
John, we're looking, do you want to put your slides into presentation mode?
Haven't done that, sorry. So I don't know what you're looking at now. I'm going to unshare again. Obviously my screen stopped doing what it should have done. I'll try again. See whether I've got it. How does that look now? Is that better?
Hello, John. This is Ali. If you can just hit the F5.
Sorry, can you see me now?
We can see your slides, John, but it's still in work mode. Put it into presentation mode.
I have indeed. I don't know why it's not doing that. Okay, I'm going to try one more thing. What can I do here? So you can see that. I'm going to try and there's something going wrong with this damn thing.
Oh, don't worry. Just continue, John. Thank you.
I'll do that. Try and make it as big as I can. Can you see okay? I'm gonna. Can you still see my slides? Okay.
We can.
Tickle Tala wants remote control on my screen. I've given it to her. Okay. You want to do something, Tickle? Okay, Dickle, maybe I've got 3 screens up. I think it'll be a bit hard for you. Give it back to me, will you? There we go. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know what's going on here, so I'm going to try one more time to share. I've got 3 screens open. What I'm going to do is just unplug one of my screens. And that'll probably make everything happen. But anyway, what I'll talk about. So we did actually really work on the COVID issues, and we had to respond really quickly to what had happened. And what we were able to do, because we were fairly on top of it for one reason or another, was to be able to switch to virtual learning immediately. I'm going to try again to put this onto the full screen share, and hopefully it'll go well this time. Have you got the full screen now?
We have, yep.
So that's Lorenz curve, just the issue. What I wanted to say is that what happened under COVID, that this issue of people being able to live in a world like that started to erode a bit. And I think everyone became more and more conscious, as you can see from the take-up of Black Lives Matter and everything else, that these issues around COVID suddenly created for a lot of people a sense of we are in the same world, and this is a pretty absurd matrix we're living in, which is why we wanted to share quickly. So we went online quickly, and I'm going to share some of the things we're going to do. We had to think about it. What sort of recovery curve we got in? You've got this timing and response slide now, have you?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so it looks like working. So we figured we are looking at least this, maybe that is a recovery. And so not only do we have to, like you, recover our businesses, get them up and going, make them COVID safe, but we had to make them flexible and transition quickly into something that's going to survive under COVID. And we realized that We already had a learning deficit with the pace of the world change. What COVID did was ramp up our speed for learning, everybody. So we figured that we're into a collaborative world now. The only thing we can do is collaborate maximally. And in that way, we'll be able to accelerate rapidly because the cross-learning mistakes everyone's making can be shared quickly. So that's been our philosophy going forward. And the other thing that drove the way we went into adjusting to this aggressively were these sort of researchers from the 2008 crash, where you can see at the top left there that the companies that spent a lot of R&D really did a lot better. So that green graph, on this one here, if you can, I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm not actually going to mess around with all my pointers, because I do rather fear it's going to go horribly wrong if I do that. But I will try one thing, see if it works. It hasn't, so there we go.
We can see your pointer, John.
Oh, there we are. So this one here is showing that those companies that accelerated during the crisis, that invested in new growth options, the ones that survived well, grew outside their core business. Now, what's that mean for business schools? Well, obviously, universities struggle with that, but we had to innovate. So this green line indicates the sort of innovation that companies do. Most organizations put a lot of work into products, online business, etc., whatever it is, in our case. But the blue line shows where you get most bang for the buck. And this is what really made us think carefully. We need to change the business model of business schools, business models of universities under these new circumstances. We couldn't just be doing the same. We've got to start reaching about mass collaboration, start engaging in projects and webinars like this with each other, find new ways to open up and just stop thinking in the same way about what we're doing. Okay? So the opportunities, we could stay in our existing market. This is sort of matrix. We can find new clients, switching from B2C. We can find new offerings, or we can jump into the white space economy. What we couldn't do was stay here. So as a business school, for us to survive.
John, we lost your sound.
Yeah, somebody muted me. Okay. Is that okay now? Wow. This is unusual. Can you hear me?
Yeah, carry on, John. We can hear you now.
Okay, fine. And you can see my slide. Yay. I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. So I want to share this short model with you just to show what we've done. Then I want to dive in quickly to some of the actual things we did to make our learning safe. So most of our businesses in the face-to-face education sit up here in the top right-hand corner. It's a catastrophic effect on us all. Okay, if we stay there, we're going to die, which is why we're all switching this pivot one into face-to-face. So we can go into a positive environment in COVID and thereafter, which is the e-learning. So you can see we're going to do that. It's going to be a 1.5 to 3 year impact that we're looking at, which means that what's going to happen there is that we're going to see that the impact we're facing will be very much, we'll get it wrong if we think it's going to be short. We've got to think for what we're going to do here in this longer term recovery. The second pivot we did is we really started pushing out new products, coaching, online education. The third pivot, we really adjusted our marketing, BD, and sales. We adjusted, although we won recently the #1 MBA Business School Award in South Africa, which is something obviously we're proud of. We're not that proud of it. Actually, we'd much rather, what we're saying is that it's really nice, but it's a big deal right now, so what? What matters is we collectively work to be #1. So we've changed our marketing and our approach to have a much more of a social impact environment, so to reflect the reality of what we're experiencing. And the final thing we have to do is how are we all going to survive in a low touch distance economy? The new economy is for a year or two, we're going to be working both in our workplaces, our companies we're advising are going to be working that. How are we going to advise people to survive in that low touch economy? And it's a new mandate, I think, for business schools. And that's interesting us. I'm sure you know all this. We're just some of the grounding for virtual learning. Anytime is asynchronous, real-time is synchronous learning, VLE, virtual learning environments, LMSs. But there's a number of types of things we can do. The accreditation programs are fine. But in a lifelong learning, we want credentialization, which is those short learning things that make you come up to speed in a new economic or technological environment very quickly. So we started thinking about our products differently. We started thinking about products which help people make sense of the contextual changes. That's why we talk about the low-touch economy and how we're all going to survive in it. And then there's another set of products which are about congregating people, events, coaching, community, and this is a congregational one and also a contextualization event. And in the virtual world, we start thinking in these ways, and this language allows us to start inventing new things. We also thought about competencies. What do we have to be good at? Virtual education. And these are skills designing and delivering impact on, in virtual that work in this world. So there's a whole cluster of skills around mastering of agility at distance. This is lean management, using online programs to manage your teams, using Trello, Teams, many other AOA, all those other devices that you can use, Miro, those are the softwares you can use to help your team work well. You really have to work hard on making sure people understanding evolving priorities of the organization, because everybody's adjusting to work from home now, and we'll have a variable work life for some time ahead. We really got to get people to help manage their home office. We've really got to work on committing connection with works and teams and managers. So that's meetings that are sometimes social. It's quite a theater. And then certainly we've got very good at this, but we need a cluster of these capabilities in order to adjust into this new world. It's no good just looking at one of them. So each of these you can create a program of almost. We thought we'd lose all these things: intimacy, dialogue, class experience, education, quality, all that. We lost a little business, some money. We lost our conservatism and sleep, but what we gained was enormous. We really did gain a lot of effect from, time in some ways, although we lost it in other variety, innovation. We got international reach really well, innovation, flexibility, all these things. So what we found was that we actually maintained, we actually kept many, many more clients than we thought we would. And we found that people were enormously grateful for our ability to innovate and pivot quickly. I keep using the pivot word, which I used to hate, but now it seems to be de rigueur. And then we found new partners, new facilities. We've got geographic reach. So suddenly this transition, I think other people have echoed that, to virtual was a really beneficial thing. Blew us away rather. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides. If I still have time, do I, Grafton, or not? I'm going to take.
John, you're fine, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So these are some of the things we decided. During the session, make sure you record it on Zoom. Introduce the objectives and structures. Change the pace. People want to have a pace. Like the video screen, you've got the remote control. Kids want to change it every 3 minutes. If you're old, you want to change it every 25 minutes. So keep changing your rhythm. All the time on your courses. You have to, because you've got to keep the brain awake, even more so than face-to-face, because you can't play with the dynamics of personality and body language in the same way. Make your presentation varied. Find little ways to do these things. It doesn't have to be big. And make sure you've got bite-sized information with small, easy to learn. What we say a lot in Henley is simple enough for clever people. Make everything you do simple enough for clever people. Don't make people work with jargon and complexity. It's kind of lazy. Simplify all that, make it accessible, and let people get into the depths of it in their own studies. And this way, then you maintain engagement on the learning. Keep the text open, keep the chat open. So if I open the chat on and the text and the Q&As here, I'm continually monitoring in sessions to see what's coming up, because it allows us to find ways to talk. Whatever people say, use if you run a poll on Zoom, use what's said, don't just forget it. It gives you the zeitgeist, it gives you the vibrant living animal that is that community of people. It gives you a sense of what they're doing. Work with it and make it relevant. That immediately enlivens what we're doing. And I'm sure you do all these things anyway. And connect the feedback to the contributions. Always reinforce, always make it real. Got to keep those minds alive and engaged. So many distractions, they can do it. Stand, perch, wander around. If you've got a good Zoom, then you can do that. Don't do long check-ins. Keep it punchy and going. Keep answers quick, moving on, and encourage people to energize each other. Use them. Show me what's on your screen. Hey, who's waving? Everybody clap at the same time, right, guys? You know, lots of these visual devices. You've got to be a little bit of a performer, and you might feel like a bit of a ham when you first start, but just get used to it. And critically important is after this session, review, revise, share learning with us. Share. You're going to gain 1,000 times more than you give away by sharing these days. And it's the only way we're going to be able to adapt quickly enough to keep our businesses, our economies and alive, but also to keep people safe, because we need fast social information in order to people to manage COVID. Okay, so Zoom gloom, you know, these are some of the problems. You can lose nonverbal cues. People get very tired of watching videos. So how do you keep people slightly awake? You know, you can be lots of devices you can use for that. So you can read all these faster than I can go through them. Parallel conversations are impossible, so it's very hard to talk. So you've actually got to be quite organized in how you allocate conversations, interactions, asking people to intervene and stick up their hands in Zoom, etc. It's unusual for the brain. So do a few video calls. You can turn on the camera, have your screen off to one side, turn off your camera. But if you want to have engagement with people, it's important to have people present. But do use the capacity to turn off your camera to go and get a cup of tea, walk around, stretch your legs in ways you wouldn't be able to do in a real class. It gives you certain freedoms. And the final check-in, what I want to do, because I know I've galloped through this a bit, but I wanted to share some of the things we found, is that this is almost like a checklist we've evolved for how to do virtual learning. You know, you have to be good at the administration. You have to be very good at prolonged, you know, blended learning programs, understand, read up a bit more about flipped classrooms. There's a wonderful word called heutagogy, Heutagogy, Heutagogy. Talk about pedagogy, andragogy, heutagogy. Heutagogy is this sort of flipped classroom adult thing. It's always nice to have a new jargon word, isn't it? So you can play with that. Make sure you review the course designs. Teach your people, have lots of communities and practice where people come together to talk about, like this, what's going on, so we can share from each other. Get your digital courseware right. So, and then really think about online student support. You can put videos up there. You can give them, it's very easy to set up little platforms, and don't think it's all got to be professional quality. You can do a really good work just by looking at cameras, speaking and engaging. And we found in this way we were able to flip our business. We met all our budgets. We've actually had a record MBA application this year. We lost some executive business, but we were on a good deal anyway. So we managed to stay ahead of our budgets and so far, and our cash flow is fine. So we've managed to maintain a successful business by switching, and it's energized people a lot. We're getting tired now. It's 100 days into lockdown, but after that, I think we're onto a good position. And the next stage is to invent these new products, get us learning to work well from home, and to prepare for a transition, not back to normal, but back to a new world, which I believe we'll be living in, of a distanced working, where it's going to be fascinating how we make that possible, partly from home, you know, batches of people, separating people out, and we'll make this work. So that's how we did it. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
John, excellent. Thank you very much. I've actually seen the more extended version of this. Really is very, very worthwhile going through. Our last panelist, and by no means least, is Professor Sama Atala. Sama, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Greetings from Egypt. Let me start by thanking AABS for inviting me to speak to this distinguished panel. Thank you, Dr. Grafen White, for your introductory remarks. I'm delighted to join Don and Robert in this important discussion. I actually have learned a lot from their interesting remarks and presentations. Obviously, we're all going through this together. I also would like to wish health and safety for every one of you and your loved one in these very, very challenging times. I have started my position as Associate Dean in July 1st, 2020. My first semester was a learning curve, and my second semester was crisis management. And now that the semester is over, I moved from crisis management mode to opportunity exploitation mode. Again, I'm sure we heard this. Everybody has heard this, that every crisis comes with an opportunity. And my view is that this disruption is a classical example of an opportunity to transform our educational models, mindsets, and our faculty modes of delivery and curricula and everything. It's really a typical disruptions. They have a tremendous and detrimental effects on our lives. We all went through an upheaval, whether in our professional lives or whether in our personal lives, indeed. However, this is really an opportunity for all of us. So in our context, on March 12th, Egypt experienced a historical event, an unprecedented amount of rainfall. For those of you who have visited Cairo, it never rains in Cairo. They would know that maybe every once in a year we get some droplets of rain here and there. And this caused a complete lockdown. And the government used this as an opportunity to impose actually lockdown. So since then, we've been home. Schools and universities have been in complete shutdown. Prior to March 12th, there was a conversation about shutting down. I personally doubted our ability and our agility to transform an educational system or experience that is based almost fully on face-to-face modes of delivery to 100% online delivery. I personally doubted that, because typically universities are generally rigid and in their structure are typically not responsive. Faculty are innovative in their research, of course, but in the same time, they are traditional in their modes of delivery. However, I was proven to be mistaken. To my biggest surprise, 1 week was sufficient to transform our educational experience, everything. This is exactly what disruption do. They have the ability, a magical ability, I would say, to change everything that would have taken much longer time to change under normal circumstances. So we immediately formed different and direct modes of communications across all departments and schools and programs. I believe that within 1 day, within our school, we met almost twice per day during the first week of shutdown. And this first week, there were no classes. Communication played a major role in facilitating challenges that were faced by our faculty this first phase of transformation. We had, as John pointed out, some of the faculty were not able to use technology. I think our ability to talk among ourselves as faculty and administrators and between faculty and their colleagues were very important, and it actually was key in mitigating the first initial fear of changing your mode of delivery and the challenge of venturing into the unknown world of online delivery. Discussions range from basically, how do I browse Zoom? How do I browse on Blackboard? How do I know how to know the attendance in a Zoom meeting? And in just different digital platforms, to different modes of assessment. What are we going to do to assess the students? And all of these discussions and conversations were actually enabling to all of us, from the most junior faculty to the most senior faculty. The second challenge we faced was our limited trust in the internet structure in Egypt. And I'm sure this is a common problem that we face in the continent, even though Egypt has made leaps when it comes to digitalization. Our internet structure is still congested, especially in peak times and especially in large cities such as Cairo. However, our internet prevalence is high. On a broader scale, from a bird's eye view, a transformation of modes of delivery to online must absolutely rely considerably on the viability of the digital infrastructure in the country. And this brought to us important conversation, an important challenge about whether we move to synchronous modes of delivery versus asynchronous modes of delivery. And this is, I remember this is a conversation that took a lot of resistance and witnessed a lot of resistance to move completely to synchronous teaching, given our worry about the internet infrastructure. This, in my mind, debate has consumed a considerable time, and it was a very important, in my view, debate to have. There are topics, of course, and courses where one-on-one interaction between faculty and student are critical. Between student and student are also equally critical and necessary. In fact, in graduate programs such as the MBA program, this is an absolute necessity to have these type of interaction among students themselves in projects and so on, and among faculty. And I recall very well a conversation that I had with my counterpart, my colleague, the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies, Dr. Ahmed Abmegid, and we discussed that we have to test the water about synchronous testing. And we decided to reach out to all the faculty that we know of in our school that had time available for a 2-hour meeting. And we had asked as many of them to come and giving their time limitation to come and spend these 2 hours on a Zoom call talking about different things related to our modes of operation, about learning, assessment, and so on, just to test how long can a Zoom meeting last with the current internet infrastructure that we have, and whether or not the large number of people on the call can be handled giving our internet structure. We're able to test something that never happened. And we're able to manage this conversation and to allow professors to have different options of modes of delivery. To me, as trivial as this example may be, it's a small example of how running small experiments can help us learn more about our ability to scale up or not. And this will come critical later on in my remarks, because I have a firm belief that how transformation of learning should take place, it should basically take place in the form of running small experiments and scaling them up. Obviously, we do not have to wait for major disruptions like COVID-19, but obviously this mode of running a small experiment can be easily scaled up is key to managing this transformation. After we succeeded in delivering an online mode of delivery that is very fitting to the type of education that business students need, these modes of delivery were depending on the type of course and the type of delivery that students need. The next challenge that we face are obviously the modes of assessment. Imagine an econometrics professor or a micro professor or a finance professor asking you how are you supposed to test students on key concepts that are very important to assessing their knowledge of the material. Again, to me, this is a critical component of the learning experience. And this is actually where we faced a large resistance and challenge. But also this is where the innovative ability of faculty is critical. Obviously, also what is also critical is the concern of academic integrity. Whatever system is used, they're not 100% bulletproof. But again, to me, this was a great opportunity to challenge our faculty to move from the type of assessment or question that do not test learning outcomes as they should, and really test important skills that a business graduate or a business student or a graduate of a business school should have. So we kind of use this opportunity to develop assessment modes that test critical thinking, that test critical capabilities, and to move from questions that we typically use in our assessment to types of questions that involve more collaboration among students, such as project, research components, open-ended questions. And this, to me, is really helped us in a lot of ways to produce a better type of a business graduate or a school of business graduate. Because if we embed different modes of assessment that really challenge the critical thinking and the innovative capabilities, then we in my view, we create more and better students that can manage the future of the job market. And we were able also to improvise in a way that the typical mode of assessment of exams that are supervised in a brick and mortar room are not necessarily the only way of conducting mode of assessment. The third challenge, in my view, that we faced, which is actually an existential challenge for our school, and I think for a lot of schools, which is internationalization. For us in the School of Business in the American University in Cairo, internationalization is a key strategic pillar of the school and also of the American University in Cairo. At the onset of the pandemic, we had a major logistical issue, a challenge to manage returning international students back to their home universities and vice versa, returning our students that were on exchange program abroad. This was also completed, obviously, and exacerbated by the fact that there were no flights and the airport was closed down. But we managed that with a lot of logistical support, administrative support from the universities and the embassies and the partner universities. And this will come later in my talk, as this really was a testing experiment for how strong your partnership is with a lot of the universities outside of Egypt. We are in the School of Business. We also are part of we were the only African School of Business that were part of SEMS. We are recently joined by the Cape Town Graduate School of Business. So again, this is a notion where you test how strong the network of collaborators and partners you have. The task of sending students back was very smooth and easy to be completed. Coming to the future prospects. So when I started my role as Associate Dean, I have faced a lot of resistance to embark in a fully online learning experience in our graduate programs. But however, in a way, there is a silver lining in this pandemic, is that almost all the senior administrator and the senior professors in the university believe now that the future is actually now. They have a conviction that online components or fully online programs are the future, if not the present. Going forward, I see that at least one or two of our 6 graduate programs will be either fully online or have important component online. And I think this is really critical to achieve our strategic objective of internationalization. We have to move away from the notion that the international students have to be on campus. I think this will enable us to reach out to a broader student body in the international markets and it will also enforce our notion that we are, and our pride that we are the knowledge hub, the gateway to the region, the Middle East and North Africa, as a school as a whole and as a university as a whole. So this is, for me, this is an opportunity that we can have to offer programs that enable the world to know more about our region, to know more about the continent. We need now to design our programs in a way that do not only cater for our typical target students, but they go beyond that and compete with other universities for an international student body. And that is that is interested in our region and interested in the continent. There is also another opportunity for us as schools of business, which is to expand our reach in our executive education programs in the online modes of education and to go beyond the traditional markets. And this is also critical to support the schools of business to finance their programs and to typically finance graduate programs that are typically subsidized. Lastly, we have the opportunity to push university administrators to invest more in digital platforms that are very key. And this is also going to be a very difficult challenge, given that universities now are facing more competition and they are under a very strong strained budgets, given the impact of COVID-19 on their endowments, on the revenue stream from students and from executive education. With that, I think I'm done, and I'll revert back to you, Grafton, to continue the conversation.
Samir, thank you very much for that summary of your experience in American University in Cairo. Very interesting. In fact, all three speakers produced a very interesting presentations and a variation of issues that were raised. A couple of questions. We are in the Q&A section, and I noticed that John's been busy on the chat board answering question and answers. One question. With this new approach, we've tended to, as universities, to invest a lot of money into real estate, into big campuses, and especially I've been watching the news in the UK, and where we've seen some huge facilities that are practically empty of students. And where do we see this going? Is this going to be a new development for us going forward, or do we see purposes for all this real estate that we have for teaching face to face? Anyone who would like to be the first to pick that up? John, thank you.
Have a go. Thanks, Grafton. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've got all this space and suddenly it's empty. But people are really keen to get back into the real world again. And if we don't watch out, they will too much and then be pushed out again. So I think that we have to anticipate that we're not all going to be working at home forever. We're going to learn to have our lives stay safe in our livelihoods. So when we go back into those spaces, as we will do, it'll be instead of be like this, we'll be like that. So the paradox is, will we have enough space? Because if we're going back into a distance environment and more people are coming in, you're going to have to separate people more. So we're going to be caught, I think, between having all this space and going virtual, people coming back together again and having some virtual. When people come back together, having to spread them apart more. And then we're going to work in bubbles. People are going to be kept in bubbles and separate from each other. We're going to have rotas of people coming in here and here. So it's going to be a complex, different world. And I think navigating that is one of the things that we're all going to have to get our heads into. But it's a new world. We can't think in the old way. It's either or. It's a new entity we're entering into. And I would go and look at some of these people who are designing spaces for COVID. There's some great designers out there, and that'll give you loads of ideas. I saw a company called Steelcase, S-T-E-L-C-A-S-E. It's got some lovely free guides about your learning environments, and I think that will help a lot. I'll type it in there, Steelcase. Okay.
Anyone else want to think about that? I know, Robert, that AUC have huge real estate.
Yes,
do
we do.
Do we see? Sorry, go on, carry on, Samir.
No. Actually, prior to COVID, we were also looking at our strategic investment into our $400 million campus that was built almost 12 years ago. But again, I doubt, in my view, that physical presence will be obsolete. However, as John said, we have to be very clever in the way we design the future physical space. In my view, that it has to be an integral part of complementing an online experience in a way that we have to think of how students can plug in their laptop, how the internet access in these new spaces will be, how the collaboration among students will work out in a digital era, without discounting the importance of having a physical space.
Excellent.
Okay, so Grafton, short term, none of those spaces will be very full short term. However, in Ghana, we started easing some of the restrictions. So actually people are congregating in very nuanced modes right now. But like John spoke to it, because of fiscal or social distancing, you can't pack an auditorium anymore with 300 people. Probably have 100 or 150 people in there. So I think the future will still be blended learning. So short term, they'll be empty, but going forward, we will still have use for those buildings, but we would have to think of the most innovative ways to use them, not just for the business school alone, but because of the new reality, we have to look for commercial uses for them as well, not only to have our students sit in them. If the return on those investments are supposed to take us any way forward. So I think they'll still be used for the medium term, because I think we'll use blended learning approaches, but I think those buildings shouldn't serve business students alone. They should begin to serve outside entities as well who can make us some revenue. My thoughts.
Thank you. We've got a question here from Dr. Sappho. He says, my university is a technical university and we engage in purely hands-on training. How feasible is it for adopting virtual or online learning? Anybody want to pick that one up?
This is something that I've been thinking about a lot as well, because, you know, there are trades where people have to be close and you're learning to apprentice things. Obviously, there are a number of possibilities that are slightly down the line around AI and VR and all those sort of things that become much more feasible when costs come down. But I think what we're going to have to do is learn to be brilliant at distance teaching. I'm going to show you something very quickly, if I may. May I?
Yeah, please do, John.
A diagram that'll show you something. And this is that guide I was talking about. So if you look at this here, and this is, you can see the blue are the seats, and this is how you start distancing everything out. So you can still have people in classes, but you've got to have one-way traffic flows. You've got to watch out for air conditioning. You've got to have windows open. You can't have meetings. You've got to keep people separate for periods of time. And when you put people in rooms, it's for shorter times. So there's a lot of adaptation. And I do think that it's really going to stretch the imagination of a number of people of how we can teach. But when you're working in a lab or you're working on machines, we're going to have to do it in different and more clever ways. And there are some risks we're going to have to take that only by behavioral, we talk about personal protective equipment, or PPE, what we need is PPB, personal protective behaviors, that everybody in an organization, a learning organization, commits to practicing, and you take them off campus if they don't. It's very, very strict, different environment around safety. But I do think, although it's difficult, it might well be possible.
Thank you, John. Another question's popped up from Sikan John, or is it John Sikan? How do we successfully conduct postgraduate degree examinations using a virtual platform? Sama, you touched on this in your. Do you want to just re-elaborate for us how you are handling that?
Yes, absolutely. I'll be happy to. John, I think I mean, it's easier for, I believe it's easier for graduate programs, in my view, than undergraduate programs. In graduate programs, we have the option to adopt more project-based types of assessment and more type of research-based assessment, unlike undergraduate programs where we have to rely on more quote-unquote traditional modes of assessment. I think it's easier, I always have the envy of my counterpart that is responsible for undergraduate studies. We obviously need some sort of formal, traditional form of assessment, but if these are absolutely a need, there are also very innovative digital platforms that allow some sort of proctored examination and proctored assessment. These also come with the caveat of how invasive they are to the privacy of the students. But I think, as the title of today's talk, we have to absolutely be innovative. We need to think of how we are assessing the learning outcomes. We have been framed, in my view, of a typical types of examination in a brick and mortar. There are lots of ways where we design to see whether our students have learned, acquired skills, and are able to adopt the skills that they have learned.
Thank you very much. I had one, we're out of time, but I saw one question from one of our attendees is saying, you know, how are you dealing with the aspects of dissertation research for MBA and others, master research, with field work and the constraints of COVID? I mean, certainly from our school, we are, you know, people are trying to be as imaginative as possible, interviewing remotely and those kind of things. Obviously we realize that in the short term there will be some engagement, one-on-one engagement. So we didn't see that as a huge problem. And what about the panelists? Are you seeing this as a huge problem? A researcher,
Grafton.
Robert?
Yeah. So we have taken the route of encouraging students to use a lot of secondary data. Now, you know that's useful both in quantitative and qualitative research, and we also encourage them to use more online modes of data collection as a way forward. We don't want you to go and do any face-to-face interviews in a crowded marketplace and contract a disease and then not be able to finish the thesis anyway. So that's the advice we give. It's not a rule, it's just so that you can ease the burden of the data collection phase and then graduate on time. But when it comes to defenses, Zoom is still working very well, and I have a lady graduating doing a Viva tomorrow for a PhD. So on that side, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on what kind of research that people are
very much.
doing.
No, very much. But we're saying that if you can use secondary data, by all means, there are data sets sitting in databases at bank and IC and other development bank. So if you can use secondary data sets, by all means, make that your first option. It's because of the peculiarity of the time.
Fantastic. I'm going to wrap up now. John, you look like you wanted to say something.
I was just going to give one little tip I thought might help, is that we found that by doing a recording of academic methods and research methods and doing it reasonably quickly and structured on the videos and putting those online and doing webinars around research, we're attracting an enormous interest. And we're teaching, I think in that situation, you probably teach people how to get interviews virtually. The one thing about this world is, strangely enough, I think a lot of people are much more accessible than they used to be. So there's a gap here that you can reach people everywhere. So there are some possible advantages with all the other difficulties.
Fantastic. One last point that I'd like to contribute to the discussion was when we transitioned, one of the things that we encountered was engagement, student engagement. Certainly in the early stages, there were a lot of students that were still notionally on the course, but weren't particularly engaged. And one of the things that we did was to I doubled the number of student support people that we have supporting the students. And we made a big emphasis on customer service to our student bodies. These are our customers. We need to make sure they're engaged. If they're not engaged, using the learning management system by now, level of engagement. We wait until the assignment to find out that the student has actually engaged at all, and when it's too late. So one of the things that we've learned is that we're spending a lot more money on student support, in-class student support. And we found that a really good investment because, like John, we've experienced that it's taken time for students to come around to the view that this is actually a really good way of learning. But in that transition period, having someone contact them and find out what their problems are and see how we can resolve it, especially on the technical problems, we found this very, very useful. So that may also be something that we some of us may be able to take forward in our institutions. Anyway, let me say thank you very much to our very, very experienced panel, John Foster Pedley, Robert Hinson, and Sama Atala. We really do thank you very much for your input and for the wisdom that you imparted.
Thank you.
I think one of the things we have taken away from this is that we're all experiencing the same sort of problems. We're all experiencing the same sort of solutions. And one of the things that I've taken away from this is that we're on the right track. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll hand over to, well, I'm not handing over to anyone, am I? I'm just saying thank you. And we'll bring the session to a close. Are there any announcements that we need to make, Lana or Dikal? When's the next webinar? Anything like that? Do you want to say anything?
We'll be sending an email to all members as we usually do, and also check out our social media accounts as we usually post in there as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. The recording will be made available to everyone if you would like to revisit some of the great discussions that we had today, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinars.
Thank you, John. If you want to share some of those slides, John, that would be really great.
Sure, absolutely will do. I'll send them to you, shall I?
Yeah, or through Dikal or Lana, so that anyone else that wants them can actually have them. But
and we're very happy to do some. We're very happy to do some more of those webinars, which we've had schools all around the continent, so we can do 2 or 3 and pull people together and just keep sharing. So, and also,
yeah, great idea.
Cecile recommended we get a practice group of academics together. So happy to do that too. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Cheers now.